Mines Ministry paves the way to clear $15 billion worth of M&A in the cement and steel sectors. Moves a cabinet note seeking to allow the transfer of captive mining leases. CNBC TV 18 first reported the story in November.
There's no stopping the rout in China. Stocks hit their lowest level in 3 months, even as the central bank bolsters the yuan for the second straight session.
Crude oil prices drop over 2% as traders cut long positions. Markets in Russia nosedive on opening for trading for the first time in 2016.
Wall Street ends a volatile session with minor losses. Nifty slips below 7,600. Mid-cap underperformed.
SEBI moves to limit the exposure of mutual funds and corporate bonds. Also allows dissenting shareholders to exit the company but with riders.
Flipkart springs a surprise. Sachin Bansal named as executive chairman as co-founder Binny Bansal takes over as day-to-day operations as the new CEO.
Unitech founder Ramesh Chandra and his sons Sanjay and Aditya Chandra granted bail. This after the trio was sent to judicial custody over a case filed by consumers in Greater Noida.
The odd-even scheme will go ahead as planned till the 15th of January. The Delhi High Court refuses to interfere in the car rationing scheme aimed at curbing pollution.
Nearly 2 lakh crore rupees and counting. Corporate leaders promised to invest big bucks in Andhra Pradesh on the second day of the Investor Summit. 32 MOUs inked so far.
These guys are nuts.
Boom! Boom! It's not a choice for me.
You see this guy here staring back at you? That's your toughest opponent. I think that's true in the ring, and I think that's true in life.
And the Golden Globe goes to Sylvester Stallone.
I want to thank my wife and my children, Sophia, Scarlett, and his team, Adam Bennett, William Morris, Endeavor. Incredible for making me do this. I'd like to thank MGM, Gary Barber, Jonathan Glickman for sticking to the guns. And most of all, I want to thank my imaginary friend, Rocky Balboa, for being the best friend I ever had.
Well, he played Rocky Balboa 40 years ago. The movie was a mega blockbuster, but critical acclaim was always eluding Sylvester Stallone. Not anymore. He has now won the Golden Globe for playing an aging boxing coach in the movie Creed. Rocky Balboa finally winning an award. Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. Ananta, are you still a Stallone fan?
Is that a rhetorical question? Of course I'm a Sylvester Stallone and a Rocky Balboa fan.
All right, we'll get to the Golden Globes in just a bit, but let's go straight to the top story. It continues to be the crisis in China. Seems like even Rocky cannot stop that market from its continued collapse. Now, the recovery on Friday was just a flash in the pan, or so it seems, as stocks in China continue to see some sharp cuts in trade today. Let's bring up the Shanghai Composite for you, down 5%, and that impacted the rest of Asia. The Asian markets continuing in a downward spiral. The sell-off comes despite measures that were taken by the Chinese government as well as the Chinese central bank. The yuan was guided higher by the People's Bank of China for the second straight session. The central bank also assuring investors that the economy is stable and healthy, but that did nothing to soothe frayed nerves. Deflation fears also gripping investors. Factory gate prices, which is the cost of a manufactured product, fell for the 46th consecutive month, and this offset the minor cheer from the consumer inflation number, which had actually edged higher. Rejig joins us now to wrap up what was another torrid session for Asian equities. Shri.
Asian shares sinking to their lowest in over 4 years as doubts mounted about Beijing's ability to manage the world's second biggest economy. China, again, the epicenter of unease as the PBOC confounded analysts by guiding the yuan's midpoint rate sharply stronger, a move that might calm concerns about competitive devaluation but only added to market uncertainty. The Shanghai Composite Index and the CSI 300 both ending down more than 5% after a 10% plunge last week that triggered a global sell-off of riskier assets. Financials over in Hong Kong dragged the broader market lower. We were down by almost 600 points. That's after the Yuan-based HIBOR interbank rate hit record highs. Aussie stocks ended at their lowest level since mid-2013.
They're juggling so many problems all at once. They're trying to manage the transition from capital investment and export-based to service-based economy. Second thing they're trying to do is to deal with their currency, let it become a real currency, but the problem with that is it's greatly overvalued. And then lastly, they've shown themselves a little bit fumbling in terms of trying to deal with the securities markets and deal with the debt burden in the economy. So there's a lot going on there, plus the anti-corruption, plus capital outflows. It's hard for anybody to manage that.
Volatility is mainly, in my view, is driven by the policy confusion. So that's why I think a lot of people start to question whether the Chinese government has the capability to manage the soft landing in China. I mean, that's the first factor. The first factor, I think the second factor, in my view, is still the high corporate debt issues in China. Because, I mean, this is not a new phenomenon. It has been in China for many years. But I think since last year, we have seen the acceleration of the rising non-performing loan ratios. We have heard more default cases. I mean, that could be one of the key issues for this year as well. Well, the last factor, in my view, is basically how China is going to balance between the reform and the growth to secure, the growth target for this year.
Wilbur Ross and other experts' views on where China's economy is headed. And just like what we saw with the equity markets in China, the rebound in crude oil prices also turned out to be short-lived. So you saw Brent breaking below $33 in intraday trades. Speculators have increased their short positions. Long positions have seen drastic cuts. So there you have it. Brent and NYMEX trading at those levels once again near 12-year lows. In fact, it's the sixth trading session of a loss when we talk about the crude market, pretty much indicating that maybe investors seem to be losing faith in a short-term recovery. We also have terrible news coming out of Russia, where stock markets open for the first time after the New Year holiday, only to see a major nosedive. The US dollar is making considerable gains against the Russian ruble. We asked experts where crude prices are headed. Will $20 be a new reality? Not many are willing to rule out that possibility.
I really couldn't tell you. We've fallen a lot, and I think we're close to the floor. But at this point, I wouldn't want to say that $20 is the floor. It's too volatile. But I think that in the short term, especially in the last week, and especially in light of what happened with the China stock markets, I think China will be a big factor that the market will watch very closely.
The decline continues there as far as crude prices are concerned, 32 now for the NYMEX. It was a roller coaster ride on the Loud Street as the markets resumed the downtrend today. In fact, the Nifty closed below 7,600, losing 0.5%. It was down by about 100 points during intraday trade. So if you bring up the intraday graph, you'll be able to see the kind of choppiness that we saw. It started very weak, then we saw a pullback, and then towards the close again, the market's declining in trade. The Sensex also lost about 100 points and continued to trade below 25,000. Mid-caps today underperforming the blue chips, with the mid-cap index down by about 100 points. Anuj joins us now to wrap up the day's trading action. Anuj, Friday's recovery unable to be sustained today, and it seems like perhaps that may have just been a flash in the pan.
Well, today was volatile, so maybe too early to take a call on anything today because of the kind of intraday volatility that we had. The market started at a new 52-week low on the Nifty and Sensex level. The Nifty starting below 7,500. During the course of the day, seeing 100-point intraday recovery and going above 7,600, and finally closing right in between there. So clearly a lot of volatility. But one thing which stands out is that the bulls are trying to defend 7,500 to 7,550, the previous low. That, I think, is really the big story of the trade today. Mid-caps underperformed, and that was interesting because all through last week, we had the mid-caps which stayed resilient to a falling market. Let's talk about the stocks then, where we saw quite a bit of pressure in today's trade. In terms of index heavyweights, ICICI Bank, it's almost a daily feature now. New 52-week low yet again for ICICI Bank. HDFC as well was one of the weaker stocks, down 1%. And Dr. Reddy is clearly reacting to that ruble dropping that we had in the second half. Apart from that, you had Tech Mahindra, Wipro, TCS. So ahead of earnings season, IT stocks are not looking good despite the kind of weakness that we have already seen. PSU banks in particular also were quite weak today. PNB, SBI, Bank of Baroda, all closer to 52-week lows. PNB is now down some 53% from last year's peak. So then what kept the markets in good stead? Clearly the leadership stock now is Reliance. That stock was up 2.5%, within 1% of a new 52-week high. Tata Motors as well was up 2%, and Maruti Suzuki recovered quite a bit of lost ground. So that stock was up about 1.4%. Well, let's talk about some of the mid-caps then. On the losing side, we had MIC Electronics and Syntex. Both these stocks had in the earnings season down about 14 and 7%. Dish TV as well was down about 3%. And finally, onto the gainers then. There was some gainers. Shrey Infra was up 9%. Genus Power was up 7%. And HDIL was up close to about 5%. So the bulls would believe that the market has potential to bounce back from this zone. But the bears would believe it's only a matter of time before the market actually breaks 7,500 convincingly.
It's a volatile day of trade in Dalal Street, like the rest of Asia, closing in the red. Thanks, Sardanuj, for joining us with that. Well, Asia might have closed in the red, but Wall Street, on the other hand, opened on a very strong footing. Let's bring up the frontline indices on Wall Street for you, not spooked by China at all. They have given up on some of the gains, but you still have the Dow up by 67 points, the S&P 500, meanwhile, up by 6 points, the Nasdaq also holding on in the green. European markets, they've ended the note on in a mixed bag with gains getting paired in late trade. That's how the frontline indices in Europe closed.
But let's head back home to the big story, and this is the CNBC TV 18 exclusive tonight. The Mines Ministry has paved the way to remove bottlenecks for mega deals worth $15 billion. We understand the ministry has moved a cabinet note seeking to allow the transfer of captive mining leases. Now remember, CNBC TV 18 was the first to report on this possible development in November last year when Nentara broke that story. And joining us now is Anshu to take this story forward. Anshu, let me start by asking you to detail very clearly for our viewers the significance of the amendment that is being proposed by the Mines Ministry.
That's right. The Mines Ministry has floated the cabinet note amending MMDR bill. The amendment has sought amendment to MMDR is for allowing transfer of mining leases meant for the captive mining. In 2015, when the government amended MMDR or Mines Mineral Regulation Development Bill, it had only allowed auction mines to be transferred for captive mines. Now this will pave a way for all the M&As which are stuck due to this issue of transferring of mining leases. The government is likely to take a decision by the end of this month before taking it to the parliament.
Okay, Anshu, so again, for the benefit of our viewers, which are the deals that are stuck on account of that provision, and what could finally go through once this amendment comes through?
Impact on the cement sector alone will have to be around $5 billion. Some of the deals are like JP Cements and Ultratech deal is in the pipeline, and JP and Lafarge alone are looking at selling some of their cement business. Apart from this, the huge impact will be on of $10 billion. That is if the government decides to sell its residual stake sale in Hindustan Zinc and Balco to Vedanta. So that merger will have a huge impact of $10 billion. So all in all, $15 billion impact is seen with this MMDR amendment. Back to you.
All right, Anshu, appreciate you joining us. So let's see if this does finally get the approval of the cabinet and will mean a booster shot for cement and steel, at least those pending deals. The other big story this evening, the SEBI board met today and took some crucial decisions. First, the exposure of mutual funds to corporate bonds, that has been cut. And second, dissenting shareholders have been allowed to exit the company, but do so with riders. Sajid and Naveen join us now with the details. Naveen, to you first. There are concerns over the health of corporate debt, and the move by SEBI seems to be to try and safeguard the interest of investors.
Yeah, in fact, the biggest takeaway from today's SEBI board meet that was held in Mumbai was that the setting up of limits for investment by mutual funds in particular company as well as group and sector as a whole. So this move by the regulator is basically to safeguard the interest of the investors, especially after what happened in the Amtech Auto and the JP Morgan fiasco. So now look look at the limit of exposure in single entity that the SEBI has fixed for mutual funds is that to invest is at 10% of NAV of the fund, which can be extended to 12% post the approval of the trustee. On the other hand, the exposure limit to a single sector is reduced from the current 30% of NAV to 25%. Meanwhile, the mutual funds limit at a group level to invest in a group for debt schemes now stands at 20% of NAV, which again can be extended to 25% of the NAV after the trustee approval. Other than this, the SEBI has also decided to merge credit exposure limits for single issuer of money market instruments and non-money market instruments at the scheme level. Other than this, the issuance and listing of green bonds will be governed by SEBI, and the issuer of green bond will have to make incremental disclosures to the regulator. Back to you.
Thanks, Naveen, for joining us with us. That's the decision taken by the SEBI board today on limiting the mutual funds exposure in corporate debt. Now let's go across to Sajid. Sajid, dissenting shareholders now allowed to exit companies. Obviously, they have to be riders. What are these conditions?
That's right. SEBI has come out with regulation to align itself with the Companies Act 2013, which allows for exit of shareholders in case of dissent in some of the cases like change in object clause or mergers and acquisition. In the current case, what SEBI has come out with is that in case of the company or plans to change its object clause, the promoters and shareholders will have to provide for exit of dissenting shareholders. The clause, the riders being that at least 10% of the shareholders should be dissenting against the change in object clause, and the company should have diverted or plans to divert more than 25% of the proceeds to another object as compared to what it plans plan to do as part of the prospectus. The date for the relevant date for this would be the board meeting when the board will decide to change the object clause, and the pricing would be based on the SEBI's takeover code. Remember, some of the companies don't have promoters, and in that case, the companies which don't have identified promoters or shareholders, prominent shareholders, will be exempt from this, including government companies will also be exempted from these. So this is some of the, this is basically alignment of regulations with the Companies Act 2013, and this was perhaps the last board meeting where Mr. U.K. Sinha would be chairing as a board chairman, unless the government goes ahead and gives an extension to him.
No, that looks unlikely, Sajid, at least as of now. But thanks very much, Naveen and Sajid, for joining us and taking us through the decisions taken by the market regulator at its board meeting today. Let's now stick with regulators. The Competition Commission of India has amended its merger control regulations for the 5th time in as many years. As per the amendments, the CCI may now give parties the opportunity to be heard when deciding if filing is invalid. Besides a binding agreement, the other filing trigger will be a public announcement under SEBI's takeover code. The term solely as an investment has been explained to mean acquisition of up to 10% with no board seats and no special rights. Such acquisitions are exempt from CCI filing. An investor holding between 25 to 50% in a company can increase its holding to 50% without seeking the CCI's approval, and any person authorized by a company can file a notice for the CCI. The person need not have to be authorized by the board. Let's move away from regulators now. Baba Ramdev's moves are making an impact, and no, we're not talking about yoga. The strides that Patanjali Ayurved seems to be taking in the FMCG market is catching people's attention. Credit Suisse today downgraded its rating on Colgate-Palmolive India, citing rising competition from the homegrown FMCG brand. Naveen Shetty and Arundhati Ramanan have more.
Yoga guru Baba Ramdev recently claimed that Patanjali will be overtaking all the multinational companies, barring HUL, in the consumer product space. If the latest report by the international broking house Credit Suisse is anything to go by, Colgate-Palmolive might turn out to be the latest casualty to the Patanjali onslaught. Credit Suisse believes that Patanjali's entry into the toothpaste segment has had the worst effect on the volume growth of Colgate, which has seen a significant drop in volumes growth to below 5% levels from 7 to 10% levels 15 months ago. With Patanjali looking for significant expansion in its distribution so as to increase the market share in toothpaste from the current 4 to 5%, the risks to Colgate's volumes growth increases significantly. Although Credit Suisse has downgraded the stock to neutral, it's interesting to note that the target price of 1,000 rupees on the stock is still above the current market price. Also, the report expects the earnings to grow by a healthy 17%, owing to a fall in input costs and lower tax rate, which may lead to margin expansion. Thus, going ahead, it will be interesting to note the impact that the homegrown brand Patanjali will have on its multinational peers. In Mumbai, with Naveen Shetty, Arundhati Ramanan.
The impact of Patanjali Ayurved having on Colgate. Flipkart, the country's largest e-commerce company, has undertaken a major management overhaul. Chief Executive Sachin Bansal will step down from his role of CEO and become the Executive Chairman. He's going to be replaced by co-founder Binny Bansal as the new CEO. Purnima Mullina joining us. Purnima, what are you picking up? Why this rejig now, especially since the company is expected to raise fresh funds?
Well, it's the first time that an Indian unicorn has made such a big structural change. After having served as the CEO of Flipkart for more than 8 years now, Sachin will step down and continue as the executive chairman of Flipkart, and he will be replaced by his co-founder Binny Bansal. In their new roles, Sachin will provide strategic direction for Flipkart, mentor the senior leadership of the company, and also look for new investment opportunities. Binny Bansal will now be responsible for the company's overall performance, and all the business and functional heads will now report to Binny Bansal. Mukesh Bansal also has been given an additional charge of heading the company's advertising business. And to answer your question, this move clearly comes at a time when the e-tailer has built up a second line of command over the past 1 year, and analysts are saying that the top-level changes could well be a step closer towards Flipkart having a professional CEO in the near future. This rejig also comes at a time when the company is preparing for an IPO in the next 3 to 5 years. And with the new rejig, it remains to be seen as how this will pan out for Flipkart as it is trying to cement its position in India's online retail market. Back to you.
All right, Purnima, appreciate you joining us with those details. It's an interesting change there that we're seeing at Flipkart. Could it mean a bigger change from here on? Perhaps even an exit is the question at this point in time. Now, nearly 1.95 lakh crore rupees and counting. Corporate leaders promised to invest big bucks in Andhra Pradesh on the second day of the Investor Summit. 32 MOUs have been inked so far. Kritika and Deepthi Bathini get you all the action from the Andhra Pradesh Investor Summit.
Well, like most investor summits, the AP summit was also to attract investments into the state, but this time the challenge is bigger because AP is a newer state. However, the Chief Minister is confident that AP will be amongst the top 3 states in terms of GDP growth in the country by 2022.
Yeah, in fact, Andhra Pradesh aspires to be the engine driving India towards double-digit growth rate. We caught up with Power Minister and Urban Development Minister here at the AP Investor Summit. Listen in.
I believe in the years to come we have very ambitious plans to ramp up renewable energy as globally conscious citizens, to ramp up the power produced by coal thermal plants.
States are now supposed to prepare for a special purpose vehicle. Then the money which I am giving, Government of India is giving, that can be used as a seed money, that permission we have given. A lot of countries are showing interest. Almost all 34 countries have shown interest to join the Smart City program in the country.
Several corporate houses, including Reliance Group, Suzlon, Bharat Forge, Bharti Enterprises, committed investing huge capital in the state. We caught up with some of them to understand why they were bullish on AP and to get a sense of their overall business outlook for 2016 and their business plans.
We will set up a whole automotive component manufacturing activity which will come up near Nellore. We are looking at least 3 facilities out there. Second will be a manufacturing activity more focused in defense and aerospace. In each of these areas it's over 1,000 crores. I think in one case it's close to about 1,200, in the other case it's about 1,400 crores.
Going forward, of course, looking at the digital inclusion, the vision of the Honorable Chief Minister, we would like to not only partner with them in rolling out services to the hinterland of the state, but more importantly also partner with them in setting up the smart cities.
This financial year, almost we are executing the 300 megawatt project. It's roughly 2,000 crore rupees just in the next 3 months.
They are already providing some benefits to large investors, etc. But in our case, we just want to expand our operations here and just be assured that everything will be taken care of, because we have to deal with farmers, so we have to be careful that the policies are stable.
Meanwhile, we also caught up with Apollo Hospital's chairman Pratap C. Reddy, Godrej and India head of Foxconn to understand their expansion plans for the state and to get a business outlook.
Andhra Pradesh is a very interesting state for agriculture and for Godrej Agrovet.
Okay. So in terms of investment, how much investment would you put into the state at this point in time?
We have, these are not very capital investments, but they have a huge impact on lots of farmers. But I'm guessing that we already have and we will invest up to 300 to 400 crores in Andhra Pradesh.
We're quite happy to say that we started operations in June, and we have started manufacturing operations for 7 brands in our operations, and every month we've been adding about 1,000 people, so we have about 6,000 people working in our premises right now.
I think in healthcare we have brought to India and to the world whatever is available to manage almost all diseases. Today, for what we have done, the clinical quality is equivalent to the best in the world, but our costs are 10% of the international cost.
Meanwhile, Andhra Pradesh unveiled its retail policy and reassured 21-day clearance for its projects. And going ahead, the aim is to encourage investors to come in, and for that, they will increase tax incentives and tax benefits for investors across the board. With that, it's a wrap on day 2 of the Andhra Pradesh Sunrise Summit.
That's a wrap of the Andhra Pradesh Day 2 of the Investor Summit. Andhra Pradesh done, Karnataka's next. For 14 months now, car sales have registered growth. According to monthly sales data released by Auto Apex body SIAM, car sales jumped nearly 13%. CNBC TV 18 Shweta Kothari reports, while car manufacturers are breathing easy, two-wheeler makers continue to have a tough time. This has subdued rural demand, knocks the wind out of motorcycles and scooter sales.
Festive season and higher discounts brought cheer to the car manufacturers in December. According to SIAM, car volumes jumped 13% last month as consumers hurried to make purchases ahead of a price hike effective from January. The data shows that overall passenger vehicles, including SUVs that faced uncertainty over the 2000cc plus diesel ban, recorded a 10.5% growth at 2 lakh units. This is the best December ever for passenger car sales. However, two-wheeler sales fell 3% as motorcycle volumes declined by nearly 6%, though scooters saved the day with a 3% growth. Meanwhile, the commercial vehicle industry continued its growth momentum. Overall, commercial vehicle volumes grew by 11.45% last month.
The light commercial vehicle in December have started showing some growth. So as we said earlier, the LCV demand always follows the MNHCV demand, which we are seeing happening, and we hope that over a period of time the light commercial demand also will become sustained. The worry area is still two-wheelers. We have seen that in the month of December there is a negative number of minus 3.10. We have seen a positive growth of about 3% in scooters, but a larger negative of about minus 6% in motorcycles.
However, all eyes are on the Auto Expo. That will see over 60 new models being launched across segments. That could give an additional boost to the sales volume. In New Delhi, Shweta Kothari.